Now show F-Zero 99. Now! F-Zero 99 now! It's like the SNES game. It's gonna be the SNES game times 99. So, there was a Nintendo Direct somewhat recently, and around the 26-minute mark, they showed off a new game in a series that had laid dormant for almost 2 decades. That game, of course, is called F-Zero 99, and it's the original SNES game adapted into a battle royale racer, instead of any sort of follow-up to F-Zero GX, which was the last game on a home console, and what a lot of people are expecting instead. Who could have seen that coming? Well, okay, point is that people were a bit distraught, to say the least. People have been clamoring for a new game for so many years, even one of Nintendo's shareholders was like, hey, where's the next F-Zero? And for the game to break that nearly 20-year-long streak of dormancy, being a wacky 99-player battle royale based on the first game, it's easy to see why this is a bit unpalatable for hardcore fans, and even more casual players alike. But, as the Nintendo Direct closed out with some random Mario game that wasn't especially notable or interesting, this weird new F-Zero game would drop on the eShop soon after. In fact, a lot sooner than what you'd expect from a "this game will be available later today" type release for Nintendo. Like, literally an hour or so after the Direct ended. As a very invested non-F-Zero fan who's played some of the games before, I was really curious to see if this game could be a little fun, so I downloaded it as soon as possible and started playing to see what they were cooking up. Later, I'd get to my first proper match after the tutorial, and then I realized... Wait, did Nintendo accidentally make the best F-Zero game? At the time of writing this in late September, there still isn't much content yet, with just the same 7 tracks from launch, Mute City, Big Blue, Sand Ocean, etc. But even with those few tracks, something about this game just hits different. What illicit condiment oozed onto this game's source code, making it so compelling? But instead of answering that, I'll provide some context for that question. F-Zero, the original game for the Super Nintendo as a launch title for said system, is not a good game. I will not apologize to any 40-somethings watching who may have felt hurt by that statement. Nonetheless, I think it's true for a couple of reasons. Number 1. Grand Prix is barely a step above practice mode with how sparse the tracks are, except with practice mode, you would at least have an incentive to shave fractions of a second off your time compared to just making first place, which only ever proves to be somewhat challenging on Expert in the King League, mainly due to increased obtuse turns in the tracks. If you're playing on anything easier than that, you might as well ram into the walls at the start until you're at half power. Speaking of which... Number 2. You can straight up ignore your machine's power most of the time. It'll quite literally never go down below 3/4 unless you deliberately mess up. It's more interesting to avoid the charging stations in earlier tracks because it adds a legitimate risk that isn't present normally. Number 3. Oh god, why are the races 5 laps long? They do not need to be 5 laps long, please, I'm begging on my knees. This sucks. Like, it's a minor thing, but these tracks are just long enough to always make the final lap such a drag. I feel like I'm just waiting for the race to end at that point. And altogether, number 4. Wait, I don't have a number 4. Yeah, the races are just kind of boring. They're a bit too long without that much happening in them, and the driving doesn't even control that great either. I feel like somewhere out there in the IRL extended universe, there's a world where the SNES F-Zero was the only game in the series, and there's at least a couple of video essays talking about that weird futuristic Nintendo racer. Good thing we live in the timeline where F-Zero 99 came out, so I get to talk about how it improved that game in nearly every way conceivable. One of the biggest things F-Zero 99 improves over the original that's clear, especially for the practice mode, is how the boost works. In the SNES version, you'd only get a single boost with each lap you pass, making it mainly useful for, well, the start of a lap, and maybe some edge case scenarios on certain tracks. But in 99, your boost instead pulls energy directly from your power, which not only lets you do it more often, but it adds a whole new element of risk and reward to it as well. Do you stay more conservative with your boosts because you end up low on power often, or do you greed your way into the fiery pits of the underworld? If you sucked at driving on the SNES, then you'll probably be better in this game. I actually don't know what they changed, but they changed something alright. It just feels better to turn and drift in this. I don't know. Oh, and there are also like 80 other players in a race now. Thought that might be worth bringing up. Okay, so that kind of changes everything. Going from tracks with a racer each 100 feet or so, the vehicles are big as fuck, I'm assuming, to big packs of 70 racers towards the back and the other 29 trickling out towards the front is going to have major ramifications on the moment-to-moment gameplay. The tracks are actually widened a bit to compensate, but nevertheless are still chaotic as fuck. And it's fun. Ricocheting all over the place when you're in the middle of a big pack is fun. Weaving your way in between the top racers and a bunch of bombs is fun. Managing to still make all those turns cleanly in the midst of the chaos is fun. Even screwing up and getting 67th place or whatever is fun. And yet, it doesn't feel all that random how well you end up doing in a race. There's usually some kind of method to the madness. If you manage to collect enough of these piss balls, then you can perform a super boost, which lets you fly straight over the other racers on a sky road for a limited time. Assuming you're an F-Zero 99 Pro, you can exploit the mechanics of where you're dropped off to extend it for a lot longer. But more likely, you might have been greed earlier in the race, and thus could use a super boost to stay high long enough to hopefully reach a charging station. Spin, the best ability to have in any video game. If you manage to KO another racer with it, your energy refills and the maximum will increase, enabling further greed. Though KOing one of those silver machines also increases your energy cap while maintaining the same percentage, so that's something to keep in mind if you're in need of extra energy in a pinch. Honestly, one of my favorite things about F-Zero 99 compared to the other 99 games is that you don't need a fucking PhD just to understand the gameplay. There's no batshit insane targeting system with 8 options you need to use and switch between on the fly, unlike Tetris 99, Super Mario Bros. 35, Pac-Man 99. Oh. So, something I've been neglecting to mention till this point is that F-Zero 99 and others are live service games. This comes in many forms, like the leveling system, tickets for playing daily, or just the way the main menus are laid out. I mean, this almost looks like a mobile game. But the most important of them all is that they have due dates. An end of service that will inevitably come at some point and render the game mostly or completely unplayable. It goes without saying that, yeah, this sucks. Imagine sinking hours upon hours in a game you really like, only to have your access cut off because it wasn't profitable enough for the company in tandem with a dwindling player base. At least Pac-Man 99 still lets you play if you purchase the offline mode DLC. Sorry, if you purchased the DLC. That was the wrong tense. I hope at the very least, F-Zero 99's practice mode will still be available when the time comes. With that said, I'd like to try and catalog some of my personal experiences with the game so far. I think it'd be a uniquely fitting way to present that, and to show appreciation for the game while it's still playable. Also because I have no idea where else I could go with a game like this. And for clarification, I didn't record any footage before a date here. So most of what you'll be seeing are loose recreations of stuff mentioned. F-Zero 99 is very much subject to change, as my statement from earlier about the track count became outdated days after writing it. I'll still try my best to keep this as period accurate as possible. Honestly, the first week of this game is such a blur to me. It makes me glad that I'm insane and take way too many screenshots, because I probably wouldn't have much to talk about otherwise. I think I'm the only one who's ever run out of screenshot and video space on the Switch. 3 times across 2 different systems and 1 micro SD card. Yeah. I don't remember what my first match was like, besides that it was on Mute City, though I probably played really badly, like 62nd place or something like that. Something I've gotta bring up is that on launch day, it actually took less time to get in a race with human players than in the tutorial with CPUs, because of how many people were hopping on the game. The arbitrary delay on CPU lobbies was somehow beaten by the sheer amount of real players for a brief moment. I still can't get over that. Also, the game just has strangely good netcode for a Nintendo developed game. Like, so good you don't ever think about it and just play. That, very high bar, I know. And very soon, it's the worst fucking segue ever. I'd get 6th place in a race in one of my first team battle matches. Wow! I think that's good. I still haven't played many of these, so I'm just making guesses as to what skilled play in one looks like. But 2 days later, I got 5th place in Grand Prix, a new personal best across any of the game modes. Is this what exponential growth looks like? In a 99 match 2 days after that, I crashed out and got 77th place. But it's okay, because at least I still placed right above Justy6464. Seriously, what kind of name is that? Is that like Nintendo 64 to the power of 64? Do numbers even go that high? Okay, I might not seem like a notably skilled F-Zero player from those matches, but let me show you what I managed to pull off just a few races later. To be fair, this wasn't the worst thing in the world. The person in first had a good lead on me, so it was clear I never really had a chance of getting first, but it still hurt a bit. Maybe some other day, I'd be able to get that elusive first place. It was late at night on the 22nd of September. Honestly, I don't really remember what I was doing at that moment. I think I might have been watching a Vinny Vine Sauce stream or something. On a whim, I hopped on F-Zero 99 to do a quick race in the main mode. I selected the Wild Goose, since it's the most durable out of the 4 machines, though its recovery isn't great, so it can be risky to use sometimes. Nonetheless, I went with it, and waited as the votes for the next course rolled in, ending on Sand Ocean. It started out like any other race. I was around 70th place as I hit the starting line, but halfway through, things began getting a little weird. I managed to get a KO, which I'm usually terrible at doing, so I, of course, greeted. Not sure exactly what order this all happened in, but I think it went like this. I somehow got another KO within the same race. I was like, damn, this is crazy. But then towards the end of the 3rd lap, I managed to charge up my super boost around this point in the course, and flew past the remaining racers straight into first place on the final lap, maintaining a good lead over everyone else. At this point, I could feel my heart rate increasing. All I had to do at this point was pray and hope I didn't choke super hard. And immediately I started choking super hard. I started messing up basic turns. I started bumping into walls. I ran into multiple explosive machines on the track, even boosting straight into one of them, leaving me with only around an eighth of my energy left. As the finish line came up on the horizon, there was only one more obstacle in my way. 3 more explosive machines lined up in a row, and if I even hit one of them, I would get knocked out instantly. I think one of the coolest parts about this game is the pressure, the increasing pressure you feel from your position rising, and the longer the race goes on for, up until the very last moment. Managing to pull through even just into the top 10 always manages to feel rewarding, even if you may not get a literal reward for doing so. But making first place? Well, the path my own machine was going on was beginning to intersect with that of the right most explosive machine. Well, fuck. Guess this is it for the run. Unless... And then I yelled the word yes, and probably some other expletives, before laughing from the sheer manic high of pulling that all off. And yes, I did boost at the very last moment, which would have drained my energy to 0 if I was further away from the finish line. I can never contain the greed within me. I don't know if it was data mined or just a rumor, but there were some people saying something about new tracks becoming playable by the end of September. Bit of the singularity moment. But as it turned out, they were right. Nintendo announced that the Queen League would be added into rotation for Grand Prix. Pretty cool, huh? But there's one slight problem with the announcement date in particular, but more specifically, the time. Shit. I had to make a choice. Play the final major update to a game I was anticipating for nearly a year, or check out a couple new tracks in a game I thought was surprisingly fun. So I played Sonic Frontiers. It was pretty fun, for the most part. It was getting pretty late by the time I got to the last tower, so I had to finish it the following day. Sadly, this is not a video about Sonic, so I'm gonna have to stop myself there. Yeah, that sort of brings me to my main problem with F-Zero 99. It's that, there are too many good fucking games to play. Don't get me wrong, F-Zero 99 is still fun, but there are a lot of other games I want to be playing and are beating, and it doesn't help matters that there still isn't much stuff to do because of the relative newness of the game. I still haven't gotten around to playing through games like Hollow Knight, Pizza Tower, and a whole bunch of other games in my backlog because I'm too busy playing Sonic Superstars and Mario Wonder. As a whole, that doesn't leave much room for a game like F-Zero 99. On top of that, I'm doing YouTube stuff, as you can tell, so that compounds that even further. I'm hoping that in the future, through more content updates, F-Zero 99 will become a much more feature-rich game like Tetris 99, so it can live up to the concept's full potential. So, is F-Zero 99 really the best F-Zero game? Probably not, at the moment, at least. As I just said, I think the main thing weighing it down is how little there is to do currently. As of October 15th, 2023, which is when I wrote this part, I'm actually recording this on the 16th. There's a part of me that feels a perpetual sense of dread because video games are art, and art shouldn't have a shelf life, and games are fun. I like playing game. And I believe it'd be cool to at least play the game, even after end of service, through offline modes that are not paid DLC that get delisted after end of service. Please. However, if you happen to be watching this before end of service and have an NSO subscription lying around, go check out the game. It's free. If even someone like me enjoyed my time with it despite feeling indifferent about F-Zero generally, then you might like it. Probably. Even if you are a mildly discontented fan of the series, assuming you haven't already been playing the game, in which case, my bad. And above all else, Nintendo. Please let this game last more than a year. Please. Please.